My wife. Oh, you mean the chief apothecary? My husband, Leo's, laugh echoed across the crowded art gallery. God, no, she's not a founder. She mixes scents in our guest room. It's a cute hobby. Keeps her busy while I'm, actually building an empire. The man he was speaking to, a heavyweight investor named Charles Harrington, smiled politely. He was the target. The entire night was about impressing him. I was standing 10 feet away, holding 2 glasses of champagne, one for me, one for Leo. He hadn't seen me. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, performative whisper that was still loud enough for everyone in his circle to hear. Honestly, I doubt her little business will ever make more than beer money. It's adorable, but let's be realistic. She's not exactly a visionary. That's my department. His circle of colleagues, all in identical expensive suits, chuckled. They nodded. They validated him. My blood ran cold. It didn't boil with rage. It froze. That specific icy calm you feel when you realize you've been living a lie. I looked at him, my husband of 8 years, the man I supported through his MBA, the man who still used my personal credit card for his client dinners. He was using my dream as a punchline, a little anecdote to make himself seem more powerful, more serious, more real. He wasn't just dismissing me. He was performing my dismissal for his own social gain. I watched him for 10 more seconds. He smiled, plucked another canapé from a passing tray, completely unaware. What he didn't know, as he stood there laughing, was that my cute hobby called Terra Botanics had, that very morning, just finalized its first major supply contract with the Meridian luxury hotel chain. What he didn't know was that my little business had already cleared 6 figures in net revenue last quarter, more than his entire annual base salary he bragged so much about. What he didn't know, as he boasted about being the visionary, was that his unserious wife was about to become a millionaire, and that his name was not on a single document. My name is Ava. He laughed at my dreams in front of everyone. He thought my passion was a joke. He was right. It was a joke. The punchline was his entire future. This is not a story about a broken heart. This is a story about building an empire, one insult at a time. Before the gala, before the Meridian contract, before my name was ever whispered by investors, there was the guest room. Leo called it that. The guest room? He'd say it with a smirk. Ava's in the guest room mixing her potions. To him, it was a space that was failing its one simple purpose, to house guests. When his college friends came to visit, he'd apologize profusely. Sorry about the smell, man. My wife's in her tinkering phase. You might have to sleep on the couch. To me, it was the only sane place in our house. It smelled of bergamot and sandalwood and the sharp, clean scent of ethanol. It was the smell of science, of control. My notebooks were lined up in chronological order, filled with a handwriting so small and precise it looked like code. Clinical trial data was pinned to a corkboard. My laptop, purchased with my own money, was always open to supplier databases in Morocco, chemistry forums in South Korea, and FDA regulatory guidelines. It was a place of order, fact, and potential. My house, in every other room, smelled of Leo. It smelled of his expensive, overpowering cologne, a scent called Apex that he said projected confidence. It smelled of the stale coffee from his 10 a.m. brainstorms, which were really just him pacing the living room, talking loudly on speakerphone. And beneath it all, there was the faint, acidic scent of fear. The fear of another one of his visionary ideas collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. He would come home, toss his $2,000 Toomey briefcase which I bought him as a congratulations for landing his first round of seed funding on the marble kitchen island I had paid for, and sigh as if he carried the weight of the world. "God, Ava, the burn rate is just brutal," he'd say, loosening a silk tie I'd ironed that morning. He wouldn't ask about my day. He'd just announce his. "Just a brutal day with the venture capitalists. They don't see the vision. They're stuck on metrics, on profitability. They have no appetite for real disruption." He'd walk past the guest room, glance in at my gleaming glassware and digital scales, and say the line he thought was so charming. "How's the potion making going, honey? Don't blow anything up. That's my department." He never once asked what I was formulating. He never asked about the GHKQ compounds, the liposomal delivery systems, or the market research I spent 6 months conducting. Why would he? In his movie, he was the star, the brilliant, misunderstood tech genius, a young Steve Jobs in a world of suits. I was just the supporting cast, the teacher wife with the cute hobby. He loved telling people I used to be a teacher. It fit his narrative perfectly. It was stable, it was grounded, it was nurturing. It was the perfect, non-threatening backdrop to his own high-stakes, high-risk drama. "Ava's the sensible one," he'd tell his friends. "She keeps me tethered to the real world." What he failed to mention was why I was a teacher. 8 years ago, when we got married, he was just Leo. No startup, no fancy suits, just a mountain of student loan debt from an MBA he insisted was non-negotiable for his trajectory. I was a high school chemistry teacher, and I was good at it. I loved the moment a student's eyes lit up when a complex equation finally clicked. He sat me down at our tiny IKEA kitchen table in our 600-square-foot apartment. "Ava," he said, his eyes full of that earnest passion I mistook for character. "This MBA is the key. It's the launchpad for everything. But I can't do it if I'm working a full-time job. I need to focus. I need to live it, breathe it, network." So I put my dreams on hold. My dream of getting a PhD in biochemistry. My dream of starting my own research. I put it all in a box. For 2 years, my single $55,000 a year salary paid for our apartment rent, our groceries, our utilities, and, most importantly, the interest-only payments on his $120,000 loan. I ate instant noodles for lunch so he could have networking dinners at steakhouses. I graded papers until 2 a.m. so he could go to study groups that seemed to involve a lot of expensive beer. When we bought our current house, it wasn't our house, it was my house. I put down the entire 20% down payment from an inheritance my grandmother left me. The same grandmother who first taught me how to distill lavender and understand the chemical properties of rosemary. She left me that money to build something beautiful. Leo saw that inheritance as our seed money, an investment in him. Then came his first startup, FitLink, a social media app for fitness influencers. It burned through $50,000 of my inheritance before it ever left the beta stage. He blamed the failure on market timing. His second startup, CoinFlow, a crypto analytics tool. That one was faster. It only lasted 6 months and cost me $30,000. He blamed that one on overregulation. I never raised my voice. I never said, "I told you so." I just kept teaching. I kept coming home, grading papers, and listening to him complain that the market wasn't ready for his genius. Terra Botanics wasn't born from a hobby. It was born from pure cold terror. It was born the night I realized that my husband, the visionary, was a black hole for money, and that if I didn't create my own launchpad, he was going to pull me, my grandmother's legacy, and my entire future down with him. So I resigned from my teaching job. I told Leo it was to support him more and manage the house. He loved that. He paraded me around the supportive wife. In reality, I started working 18-hour days in the guest room. I went back to my real expertise, chemistry, biology, the thing I actually had a degree in. While Leo was in the living room, whiteboarding buzzwords like synergy, disruption, and scalability, I was in my lab, actually disrupting. I was formulating a stable, bioavailable copper peptide serum that could prove its efficacy, not just promise it. While he was networking, which meant drinking expensive whiskey with other men who were also failing upwards, I was on 4 a.m. Zoom calls with botanical suppliers in Morocco and independent chemists in South Korea. He thought my biggest expense was glass bottles and pretty labels. He had no idea I'd spent $15,000, money I got from secretly selling my grandmother's diamond jewelry, on a single, independent, double-blind clinical trial. He thought I was just mixing scents. He had no idea I was building a fortress. Even Daniel, his CFO and best friend from his MBA program, seemed to know. Daniel was quiet, observant, and always looked vaguely stressed. He would sometimes call me, not Leo, with quiet, nervous questions. "Hey, Ava, just a small thing. Leo mentioned he's expensing a team-building trip to Vegas. Just checking, 'cause the receipt looks, it looks like a receipt from a nightclub. Is this something you guys discussed?" I'd sigh. "I'll handle it, Daniel. Just flag it as a personal expense. I'll cover it." I was the COO of our entire life. Leo was just the self-appointed CEO, a figurehead burning through cash he didn't have. He thought the gala was his night. He thought Charles Harrington was his target. He had no idea that I was the one holding the entire fragile ecosystem together. The laughter, the public humiliation, that wasn't new. It was just the first time he was stupid enough to do it in front of people who mattered. And it was the last time I was ever going to let it happen. Leo didn't just look embarrassed. He looked confused, as if I had suddenly started speaking a language he didn't understand. The language of facts, the language of clinical data, the language of profit. I turned my back to him, giving my full, undivided attention to Charles Harrington. It was a deliberate, brutal dismissal. In that moment, Leo ceased to exist. "Your peptidic compound," Charles said, his voice low and serious. He hadn't touched his champagne. He was all business. "Is it a GHK-Q variant or something new?" "It's new," I said, matching his tone. "We stabilized it using a lipid delivery system. It's what allowed us to get 80% more penetration in the clinical trials. That's what the aura spas were interested in. Efficacy, not just a nice story in a jar." Charles nodded, his eyes sharp. "You're not just the perfumer, are you? You're the chemist. I was a high school chemistry teacher for 10 years, Mr. Harrington. I just happened to be good at marketing, too." "Ava," Leo finally sputtered, stepping forward and putting a hand on my arm. It felt proprietary. It felt heavy. "Honey, you're boring, Mr. Harrington. This is a tech event. He's here to see my platform." I looked down at his hand on my arm. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. I just stared at it. At his manicured fingers. At the gold signet ring I bought him. I just stared until the heat of my gaze made him feel awkward. Slowly, he removed it, as if it had been burned. "On the contrary, Leo," Charles said, not even glancing at him. "This is the most interesting conversation I've had all night. Send me your deck, Miss Thorne, not the marketing one. Send me the clinical data and the trial methodology." "Of course," I said. "You'll have it in the morning." He handed me his personal card, not his standard issue bank card. His private equity card, the one that was matte black and felt heavy, like a weapon. "My wife's name is Eleanor. I'll make an introduction. She's a dermatologist. She will want to hear about this. And just like that, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, leaving me alone with my husband. The drive home was a special kind of hell. The interior of our leased BMW 7 Series, which he insisted we needed for client image, felt like a soundproof box. The silence was thick and toxic. For 10 minutes he just gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I could see the vein in his temple throbbing. I simply looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past, already running through a checklist in my head. Finally, he spoke. His voice was dangerously quiet. "What the hell was that, Ava?" "What was what?" I asked, my voice placid. "What was that?" "You embarrassed me. You humiliated me in front of Charles Harrington. Do you have any idea what you just did? I believe I corrected your misinformed statements about my company." Your company." He barked out a laugh, but it was hollow and cracked. "It's a hobby, Ava. You got one lucky break with a hotel. You don't lie to a man like Charles Harrington. Peptidic whatever. You sounded ridiculous. You sounded like you were reading the back of a shampoo bottle." "He didn't think it was ridiculous, Leo. He's the one who asked for the clinical data. He was being polite, because you're my wife, and you acted like an ungrateful, arrogant child. I had him, Ava. I had him right where I wanted him, and you swooped in with your skin cream. You tanked my relationship with my primary investor. He's going to think I'm married to some delusional woman who is more successful than him," I finished. He swerved slightly. A horn blared behind us. "You are not more successful than me," he roared, finally letting the mask slip. "I am building a scalable tech platform. I'm in charge of 30 people. You are making face cream in the guest room. Then you have nothing to worry about, do you?" I said. My voice was ice. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. The second the car stopped in our driveway, I was out. I didn't go to the master bedroom. I went to the guest room, my lab, my office. I locked the door. I heard the click of the deadbolt. It was the loudest, most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I ignored the 14 texts from Leo, which came from the other side of the door. They were a pathetic, predictable cycle of abuse. The rage. "You will apologize for this." The gaslighting. "You're being hysterical, Ava. You misunderstood the whole night." The pleading. "Ava, come on, we're a team. Don't do this. Open the door." The threat. "I am warning you, Ava. Open this door. You are destroying our marriage." I was already on a video call. The face on my screen was tired and stressed. It was Daniel, Leo's CFO, his best friend. "He's outside your door, isn't he?" Daniel whispered, clearly in his own home office, a kid's drawing taped to the wall behind him. "Yes, he's upset. Ava, I saw the whole thing at the gala. I was proud of you. But you need to be careful. He's spinning out. He's not the man I used to know." "I know, Daniel." "The message you sent. What did you mean it's worse than we thought?" Daniel closed his eyes for a second, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Ava, Leo hasn't been just failing upwards. He's been actively committing fraud. My blood didn't just run cold this time. It stopped." "What kind of fraud?" "He's been lying to his investors, to Charles, for at least 6 months. The user acquisition numbers he's been reporting, the ones on that slide tonight, they're fake. He's been using company money, investor money, to buy bot farms in Moldova and Eastern Europe to inflate his daily active users. He's creating the illusion of traction. I thought of the Platinum Server package I'd flagged months ago. The one Leo said was essential for scaling. It wasn't just an ego buy, it was to handle the fake traffic. "But the financials," I started. "Daniel, you're the CFO. You sign off on them." "That's the worst part," he said, his voice full of self-loathing. "He has a separate bank account, a shell company registered in Delaware called Momentum Partners LLC. He's been funneling the investor money through that to pay the bought farms. He tells me they're consulting fees. I've been trying to get access for weeks, but he's the only signatory, he continued. And Ava, he's been lying to you. The house. He told you the startup was paying for its half of the mortgage, right? As a rental payment for using the office space. Yes, I said slowly. He transfers it to our joint account every month. No, he doesn't. He hasn't for 4 months. He's been covering it by taking out high-interest cash advances on the company credit cards. Plural. The ones he told me were for travel and entertainment. He's juggling debt to hide the fact that he is completely, totally insolvent. The entire empire is a house of cards, Ava. He's got maybe 10, 12 days of cash left, tops. I sat there in my lab, surrounded by my real business, my profitable business, my clinical trials, my Meridian contract, and the gala, Daniel said. That wasn't just to impress Charles, it was a desperation play. He needed a second round of funding before the first round money officially runs out. He had to get that check or the whole thing implodes next week. 8 days. He had 8 days until his whole world collapsed. Why are you telling me this, Daniel? I asked. He's your best friend. Daniel looked at the camera. He was my friend. The man I knew wouldn't do this. This is just greed. And he's using me to legitimize it. He's forging my signature on financial reports, Ava. He's going to take me down too when this implodes. And he's doing it to you, the one person who's ever actually supported him. I have a family. I won't be a part of it. He took a deep breath. Ava, I'm going to send you everything I have, the real bank statements, the invoices I can see, the suspicious wire transfers to Moldova. When this blows up, you need to be protected, because he's not just going to lose his company, he's going to lose your house. The bank doesn't care whose name is on the deed if the mortgage hasn't been paid. A new text from Leo lit up my phone screen. I am warning you, Ava. Open this door. I looked at the text. I looked at Daniel's terrified face on the screen. My husband wasn't just a fool. He was a criminal, and he was trying to take me with him. Thank you, Daniel, I said. Send it all, and send me the name of his lawyer, the one he's had on retainer. Why? Because, I said, turning to my other monitor and attaching my clinical data to a new email. I'm hiring a better one. I typed in Charles Harrington's email address and pressed send. I wasn't just a teacher with a hobby anymore. I was a CEO with an 8-figure contract and a criminal partner. I didn't go to a divorce lawyer. I went to a corporate litigator. Her name was Miranda Sterling. She was the kind of woman who didn't have client testimonials on her website. She had significant court victories. Her office was on the 50th floor, overlooking the entire city. It was designed to remind you that she was above it all. The furniture was sparse, the art was abstract, and the silence was heavy and expensive. I sat across from her glass-topped desk at 7 a.m. the next morning. I hadn't slept. I laid out everything. The incorporation papers for Terra Botanics, filed 3 years ago as a sole proprietorship. The clinical trial data, the fully executed Meridian contract, the mortgage documents for the house, clearly showing the down payment from my inheritance, with my grandmother's name on the originating check. And finally, a printed-out copy of Daniel's entire text history and the financial statements he had sent me. Miranda listened for 10 minutes without saying a word, her fingers steepled. She didn't take notes. She just listened. When I finished, she finally spoke. Her voice was as sharp as her suit. All right, so we have 2 problems. The first is your husband, the fool. The second is his creditors, the sharks. The first one is easy to handle. He's arrogant and sloppy. The second one will eat you alive if we let them. But the house is in my name, I said. The business is mine. The inheritance was mine. How can they touch me? That doesn't matter, Ava, she said, leaning forward. You are in a marital property state. Even if it's in your name, the increase in value during your marriage is considered joint property. But worse, you've allowed a commingling of assets. The second he started paying or pretending to pay the mortgage from his business accounts, he gave his creditors a potential claim. When his company goes bankrupt, and it will, they will argue that your house is a corporate asset. They will claw it back. And your business, they'll say his rental payments funded its growth, giving them a stake. I felt the blood drain from my face, my fortress, my lab, the one sane place. So what do we do? Miranda smiled, a thin, terrifying smile. We build a wall, a real one. Today, before his world ends in 8 days, we need to legally and financially separate you from him before his ship sinks, so you're not chained to the wreckage. She laid out the plan. It was surgical. First, Terra Botanics. Your sole proprietorship is useless, she said. We are going to file an LLC for Terra Botanics immediately, but as a subsidiary of a new holding company, AT Holdings, registered in Delaware. It's a complex, ironclad structure that will take days for his creditors to untangle. By the time they figure it out, we'll be in court. Second, the house. His company is a tenant. Your new holding company will be the landlord. His company, Momentum Tech, is in default. We are going to formally evict them. Evict him from our house? Not him, Miranda corrected. His company. We are serving Momentum Tech with a formal notice of default for 4 months of non-payment, effective 72 hours from now. This creates a legal, time-stamped paper trail proving that, far from funding you, he was in debt to you. We are establishing that you are a creditor, not a partner. It's a crucial distinction. Third, the fraud. This was the weapon. Daniel is your key, Miranda said. He's the CFO. He has a legal fiduciary duty to report irregularities. He's not just your friend, he's a material witness who is currently complicit. He needs to protect himself, which in turn protects us. That night, I was back in my lab. Leo was in the house, but he was strangely quiet. The fight had gone out of him. He was probably terrified. He had 8 days left. I called Daniel. He looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. Daniel, I spoke to a lawyer, I said, my voice low. We have a plan, but you're the most important part of it. You're not just an observer. You're the CFO. You're legally on the hook. I know, he whispered, rubbing his face. He forged my signature on the Q2 report, Ava. I could lose my license. I could be disbarred. I could go to jail. Exactly. Which is why you have to act. My lawyer says you can't just not have access to the Delaware Shell account. You have a fiduciary duty to the investors, to Charles Harrington, to see the full financial picture. You need to formally request access. Request it from Leo. He'll just lie to me, Ava. He'll say it's a trade secret project. He'll fire me. I know. And you need to get that in writing. Send an email, not a text, an official email to Leo, and you will CC the entire board. The board is just him and 2 of his college friends. Perfect, I said, channeling Miranda's cold logic. Then their negligence will be on the record too. You will state that for the upcoming quarterly audit, you require full visibility into the consulting fees paid to the Delaware entity, Momentum Partners LLC, in order to sign off on the company's financials. You will use these words: fiduciary duty, require, sign off. Daniel was pale, but he was nodding. He saw it. This was his lifeline. It changed him from a co-conspirator into a whistleblower. What will that do? He asked. It will do one of two things, I said. 1. He panics and gives you access. We get the final proof. 2. He panics, refuses in writing, and proves his conspiracy to commit fraud. Either way, we win, okay? Daniel said, taking a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. I'll draft it right now. For the next 72 hours, I was a ghost. I slept in the guest room, my lab. I locked the door. I left the house before Leo woke up. I ate protein bars in my car. I was no longer a wife. I was a CEO executing a hostile takeover of my own life. The walls of my fortress were built. I spent a day at the bank. The entire 6-figure sum from the Meridian contract and every dollar I had ever earned was transferred into the new AT Holdings accounts. Untouchable. A legal courier arrived at my own house. He handed a formal, terrifying-looking notice of default to a very confused Leo. I watched from my lab window as Leo read the document, his face turning from confusion to ashen white. He was being legally evicted from his own home office, not by his wife, but by her holding company. I was on the phone with the Meridian Hotel chain, negotiating an expansion of my contract to their European locations, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel. It came in Friday night at 8 p.m. Sent the email. He's gone ballistic. He's calling an emergency all-hands meeting for Monday morning. He says it's to rally the troops. And Ava, he just called Charles Harrington. He left a 5-minute, unhinged voicemail. I think he's going to ask for the second round of funding. Now. He's trying to get the money before the audit. The countdown was over. The game was starting. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I wasn't in my lab. I was sitting in my car, my old paid-off Honda, not the least BMW, in the parking garage under Leo's office building. I was dressed in a navy blue power suit that I'd bought with the first profits from Terra Botanics. It was armor. I was holding a single, leather-bound folder. Daniel had texted me at 8:52 a.m. He's here. Charles Harrington is here. Leo thinks he's going to pitch him. He has no idea what's coming. He thinks you're at home, defeated. I had waited. I gave them 10 minutes. 10 minutes for Leo to start his performance, to weave his final web of lies. I could picture it. Him, pacing in front of the monitor, full of false energy, high on his own supply, using words like synergy and runway. At 9:10 a.m., I walked out of the elevator. The receptionist, a young woman Leo had hired, looked up, surprised. Oh, hi, Ava. Leo's in a big meeting. I don't think you can... I know, I said, not slowing down. I'm expected. I didn't knock. I pushed open the glass doors to the main conference room. The music of his voice stopped, hard cut to silence. Leo was mid-sentence, his arm raised, pointing to a giant monitor. The monitor displayed a graph that was, I knew, pure fiction. His daily active users from the bot farms. A beautiful, soaring, hockey stick-shaped lie. He stopped. His mouth hung open. Charles Harrington was at the head of the table, his face like stone. Daniel was at the far end, looking pale but resolute. And there were 2 other men, Leo's college buddy board members. They just looked confused, like they'd been woken up too early. Ava, Leo hissed, his face darkening. What are you doing here? This is a private board-level meeting. Get out. I'm not here as your wife, Leo, I said calmly. I walked past him and placed my leather-bound folder on the conference table, directly in front of Charles Harrington. I am here as a creditor. Leo froze. His friends looked baffled. I am the sole proprietor of AT Holdings, the company that owns the property your business has been operating from rent-free for the last 4 months. You are in default. This, I tapped the folder, is a formal notice of eviction and a lien against your company's assets for failure to pay. One of Leo's friends, Chad, sputtered. What? Leo told us she was letting us use the space, as a supportive wife. He lied, I said, turning to him. He told you that. He told me he was paying for it. It seems he lies to everyone. Charles Harrington didn't look at the folder. He just looked at Leo. His eyes were arctic. Leo, Charles said, his voice dangerously quiet, you told me your overhead was covered. You told me you had a 2-year runway. You submitted financials last week that claimed 0 property debt. She's exaggerating, Leo said, his voice cracking, the red blotches starting to appear on his neck. This is a marital dispute. She's being vindictive. She found out This is a conflict of interest. Daniel, tell him. Tell him she's unstable. Daniel looked at Leo, and for the first time I saw the man he was supposed to be. I can't do that, Leo, Daniel said, his voice clear and shaking. As Chief Financial Officer, I have a fiduciary duty to inform the board that I cannot and will not sign off on the financials you presented today. Leo's face turned a deep, blotchy red. You traitor! They're fraudulent, Leo, Daniel said, standing up. The user numbers are fake. The revenue is non-existent. You've been paying for bot traffic with funds from an unaudited Delaware account. You've been committing wire fraud. The room was silent. You could hear the air conditioning hum. Leo looked from Daniel's resolute face to my calm one. He saw it. The trap. He had been completely, totally outmaneuvered. You, he whispered, pointing a shaking finger at me. You did this. You poisoned him. You couldn't stand that I was the one building something real. You were always jealous. You and your stupid face creams. He turned to Charles, desperate, grasping at straws, his voice becoming a whine. Charles, she's a joke. She's nobody. She's just a teacher mixing potions in a guest room. You can't listen to her. Give me the bridge funding. Give me 6 months. I'll fix the numbers. You'll fix the numbers, Charles repeated. The word hung in the air like a verdict. I mean, Leo stammered, realizing what he'd just admitted. I mean, I'll optimize. I held up my hand. He's right about one thing, Mr. Harrington. Everyone looked at me. I am the one who's been mixing potions in the guest room. He's also right that his own company is completely insolvent. What he seems to have missed while he was busy building his empire was why I was able to tolerate his personal and professional debt for so long. I walked to the monitor. I unplugged his laptop. The fake graph vanished. I plugged in my own. The screen lit up. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was the homepage of the Meridian Hotel's website, featuring the Aura Spa exclusively offering Terra Botanics treatment. This, I said, is my hobby, Terra Botanics. While Leo was buying fake users, I was acquiring real ones. I switched to the next slide. A simple, clean graph. Real numbers. Here is our Q3 revenue, $1.2 million. Here is our projected Q4 revenue, based on the Meridian contract rollout, $3.8 million. We are profitable, we have 0 debt, and we own our IP outright. I switched to the next slide. It was an email. Leo laughed at me at the gala for my cute business. He didn't know that the man he was laughing to, you, Mr. Harrington, would be so intrigued. Your wife, Eleanor, is a brilliant dermatologist. She and I met 2 days ago. She reviewed my clinical data. I clicked to the final slide. A formal, executed letter of intent. This is an offer received at 7:1 this morning from Eleanor Harrington's private equity firm to acquire a 20% minority stake in Terra Botanics. I let the number just sit there on the screen. Valuation, $15,000. I turned to look at Leo. His face was white, all the blood, all the ego, all the bravado, gone. He was hollow. He looked at the screen, at the $15 million number. He looked at Charles Harrington. Charles didn't look at him. He looked at me, and for the first time that day, he smiled. A real smile. Leo was right about one other thing, I said, my voice echoing in the dead silence. He is the visionary. I turned and looked right at my husband. He just never realized the vision was me. Charles Harrington stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. He looked at Leo, not with anger, but with the cold, dead indifference of a man closing a bad deal. "You're done," he said. Then he turned to me. "Ms. Thorne, my lawyers will be in touch with yours. We should have lunch." I didn't feel elation as I drove away. I didn't feel joy. I felt quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a violent storm has finally passed. The adrenaline was gone, and all that was left was clarity. When I pulled into my driveway, a blue van was already parked there. A locksmith arranged by Miranda Sterling at 9:15 a.m. He was a kind-looking older man. "Miss Thorne?" he asked. "Yes, please change every lock on the property, including the garage and the back gate. No one else is to have a key." "Yes, ma'am. Will take about an hour." I went inside. The house was silent. It already felt different. It felt lighter. I didn't go to the master bedroom to weep or break things. I went there with a purpose. I opened the large walk-in closet. His side, full of expensive suits I had paid for, was on the left. My side, full of practical, professional clothing, was on the right. I pulled out his largest to-me suitcase, another gift from me from a time I still believed in him. I began to pack for him. I folded his Tom Ford suits, the ones he said were essential for meetings. I packed his ridiculous collection of tech visionary black turtleneck. I packed his designer shoes, the ones that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I went into the bathroom. I took the velvet tray from his dresser and swept his dozen expensive colognes and skincare products into a cardboard box. The Apex scent he loved filled the air, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I just felt tired of it. I packed his golf magazines. I packed the framed photo of him ringing the bell at a startup exchange, a photo I knew was just a PR stunt. I was not angry. I was an efficient, emotionless concierge, closing out a guest's long overdue stay. It took me 20 minutes to pack up 8 years of his life. I rolled the suitcase to the foyer and set it by the front door. I placed the cardboard box of his toiletries beside it. Then I went to my lab. I sat at my desk, the hub of my real life. I took a piece of my company letterhead, the thick, cream-colored paper with Terra Botanics embossed at the top in gold foil. I wrote him a note, not a letter, a note. It was a list. "Leo," it said. 1. Your belongings are packed. A car service will pick you up at 3 p.m. 2. Here is a check for $5,000. It is a one-time final payment. Do not try to cash it. It has already been deposited into a new checking account in your name. This is the last money you will ever receive from me. 3. Your attorney will be contacted by mine regarding the divorce proceeding. 4. I have instructed my security and staff to call the police if you set foot on this property. You are no longer welcome here. 5. Here is a printed copy of the wire fraud evidence. My lawyer has the original. So does Daniel. So does Charles Harrington. I paused, then added one last line. You said I wasn't in your department. You were right. My department is profitable. Goodbye. I sealed it in an envelope and taped it to the handle of his suitcase. At 2:45 p.m. I was on a video call with the logistics team for the Meridian Hotel rollout, discussing shipping routes to Singapore. Through my office window, which overlooked the circular driveway, I saw an Uber pull up. Leo got out. He looked small, deflated. He was carrying his expensive briefcase, which I knew was now empty. He walked to the front door. He fumbled with his key. I heard the sound even through the glass, the faint, metallic click, click, click of a key failing to turn. He tried again and again. Confusion. He knocked. Ava, Ava, open the door. The key isn't working. He pounded, his voice rising in panic. Ava, this is ridiculous. Open the door. I didn't move from my desk. I just watched. He finally saw the suitcase. He stopped. His hand dropped from the door. He stared at the suitcase for a long time. Then he saw the envelope with the Terra Botanics logo. He ripped it open. His eyes scanned the page. I watched his shoulders slump. He read the part about the wire fraud. He read the part about the car service. He read the word goodbye. He looked up, desperate, and his eyes found me in the window. I didn't hide. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just looked at him. I held his gaze. There was no rage left in him, just the hollow, pathetic understanding of a man who had not just been beaten, but had been rendered completely and totally irrelevant. He looked down at the envelope, at the name of the hobby he'd laughed at. The 3 p.m. car service, a sleek black town car, which I'd paid for, pulled up to the curb. Leo, my husband, the visionary, picked up his suitcase, his box of colognes, got into the back of the car, and was driven away from my house for the last time. I turned back to my laptop. My team was waiting on the video call. I'm sorry about that, team, I said. Now, about the shipping manifests for Singapore. The check from Eleanor Harrington's fund cleared in 24 hours, but Eleanor didn't just give me money, she gave me a team. I was summoned to her office. It was the opposite of Leo's chaotic, whiteboard-stained startup. Eleanor's office was quiet, minimalist, and ran with the silent precision of a Swiss watch. She was older, sharper, and didn't suffer fools. Ava, she said, sliding a folder across a table that looked like a single piece of polished stone. Your product is a miracle. Your science is sound. Your infrastructure is a guest room. We are going to fix that. Immediately. She wasn't an investor in the way Leo understood it. She wasn't a venture capitalist looking for a quick exit or someone who'd be impressed by buzzwords. She was a builder. You have 2 immediate problems, she continued. First, you can't fulfill the Meridian Hotel contract, let alone my new retail introductions by mixing serums by hand. You need a co-packer and a real R&D lab yesterday. Second, you have no one on your team you can trust with the numbers. Let's solve the second problem first. I knew who I had to call. I met Daniel at a coffee shop. He looked terrible. When Momentum Tech imploded, and it imploded spectacularly, with lawsuits from Charles and the other investors, Daniel was named as a party. Even though he was the whistleblower, the association with Leo's fraud made him toxic. He was unemployed, unemployable, and drowning in legal fees. He's trying to blame me, Daniel said, staring into his cold coffee. His lawyer is claiming I was the one who set up the shell accounts, that I was the mastermind. My lawyer has the email trail, I said, the one where you requested access and he denied it. You're safe, you'll be a witness, not a defendant. He visibly relaxed. Thank God, Ava, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, I said. Be my CFO. He looked up, shocked. What? Ava, I'm toxic. My reputation. I'm not hiring your reputation, Daniel. I'm hiring your conscience. I need someone who knows what fraud looks like from the inside out. Someone who will guard my financials with their life because they know what happens when you don't. The job is yours, if you want it. I slid a contract across the table. He looked at the salary and his eyes filled with tears. I won't let you down, Ava, he said. I know, I replied. With Daniel guarding the bank and Eleanor opening the doors, I finally got to do what I was born to do, build. The guest room was packed up. The equipment moved to a new 10,000 square foot R&D facility. It was all chrome and glass and bioreactors. We hired a team of PhDs in biochemistry. We didn't just mix potions. We synthesized our patented GHKQ compound in-house. Within 6 months, the Meridian Hotel contract wasn't just fulfilled, it was expanded. They wanted Terra Botanics in every one of their 88 locations worldwide. Eleanor made one phone call. Suddenly, we weren't just a hotel supplier. We were in Neiman Marcus. We were in Harrods. We were the featured brand in Vogue's The Science of Skin issue with a 3-page spread. The cute hobby Leo had laughed at was now a multinational corporation. I was in a board meeting, my real board meeting, with Eleanor, Daniel, and our new head of logistics, reviewing the plans for our European launch. My assistant buzzed me on the intercom. "Ms. Thorne, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a Leo Thorne here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." I paused. I hadn't seen or heard from him since the locksmith. It had been 9 months. "Send him in," I said. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Daniel just stiffened, his face hardening. Leo walked in. It wasn't the man I remembered. The Tom Ford suit was gone, replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting blazer from a department store. He was thin. His visionary energy was gone, replaced by the dull, tired, and slightly greasy look of someone who had faced actual consequences. The wire fraud case had been settled out of court, but it had ruined him. "Ava," he stammered, twisting his hands. He looked around the conference room at the view of the city, at the custom-built table. "Wow, this is some office. What do you want, Leo?" I asked. My voice wasn't cold. It was just busy. I wanted to talk," he said, his eyes darting between me and Eleanor. I've been thinking a lot, and I've been working on a new project, a logistics app. It's really good, Ava. It learns from shipping manifests. And I know I messed up, I know I did, but you're doing so well. And you always understood my vision." He slid a crumpled piece of paper across the desk. "A business plan written in frantic handwriting. I was thinking," he said, his voice dropping to a desperate, hopeful whisper, "maybe I could consult for you. I mean, your logistics must be a nightmare now. Or maybe you'd want to be an angel investor, for old time's sake." I looked at the piece of paper. I looked at Daniel, who looked like he was about to be physically ill. I looked at Eleanor, who was watching the entire exchange with the detached curiosity of a biologist studying an insect. I didn't laugh. I didn't yell. I just pushed the paper back toward him. "Leo, you were right about one thing all those months ago. You are a visionary. I am not." He looked up, confused. "Hopeful. I'm an executor," I said. "And in the real world, vision without execution is just a hallucination. I don't invest in hallucination." His face fell. "Daniel," I said, turning to my CFO, "please see Mr. Thorne out." Daniel stood up. "Leo, this way." Leo looked at me, his eyes finally understanding. There was nothing left to take. He turned, and for the second and final time, he was escorted out of my life. I turned back to the board. "Now," I said, "about the Q4 projections for the European launch. It's been 2 years since I saw Leo in my office. Terra Botanics is now valued at 9 figures. We have labs in 3 countries. The guest room is now an entire floor in a glass tower overlooking the harbor. My life is full of meetings and contracts and pressure. From the outside, it probably looks a lot like the life Leo pretended to have. But the difference is when I come home, there is silence. Not an angry silence. A peaceful one. I moved out of that house. I live in a new place, one he has never seen. It's minimalist and full of light, and it smells like sandalwood, not Apex cologne. Sometimes I think about that night at the gala. The moment my blood ran cold. The moment he laughed. It's funny. Leo laughed at me because he thought my dream was small. He thought mixing scents was a silly, unserious thing for a woman to do. He thought empire building was loud and wore a suit and gave speeches. What he never understood, what men like him can't understand, is that he was looking for a shortcut to an empire. He wanted the title of visionary. He wanted the applause. He wanted the trappings of success without the work. He never understood that true empires aren't built on vision. They're built on work. They're built at 5 a.m. in a guest room while everyone else is sleeping. They're built in notebooks and on spreadsheets and in 1,000 failed experiments that you learn from. They're built on the quiet, unglamorous, daily execution of a single, perfect idea. He laughed at my hobby. He didn't realize that my hobby was just my work in disguise. And in the end, I didn't just build a company. I reclaimed my life. He thought my world was small. He just never realized how big it was about to become, and how small he was about to be left within it.